Hi everybody, welcome back. I am stoked that you tuned into my latest video. It's been a hot minute, but just to recap, this is my channel dedicated to my ex-Jehovah's Witness activism. If you've not seen any of my videos up to this point, I would encourage you to hit pause right now and maybe go check out my introduction video where I talk a lot more about myself and some of my history. Today, I wanted to take some time and talk about post-waking up and healing. As you all know who have watched my past videos, especially if you've watched them in order, you're aware that I've gone through quite a few dramatic traumas that are related to the Jehovah's Witness religion and things that happened to me while I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Those traumas include, for those who may have not seen those videos yet, things ranging from childhood sexual abuse to domestic violence at the hands of an active witness husband, as well as your stereotypical day-to-day misogyny that all of us women were really used to, I guess you could say, dealing with. There, of course, were losses along the way, both in death as well as family members due to shunning. So, because of such a hectic, crazy, emotionally straining journey that I've been on so far, I receive a lot of very encouraging comments on my videos as well as in messages to me. Sharing with me that life gets better and things are so much happier outside of the witnesses, and I appreciate that sentiment very much. But I just wanted to take this video to be clear that I am well aware of that. The reason I made this channel is actually because I am so far on this side of things. I'm very, very happy. I have a productive life. I'm in a fabulous situation beyond what I could have imagined when I was a witness. And I wanted to take this specific time to really talk to people out there who maybe you are PMO. Maybe you're physically in but mentally out of the organization, and one thing stopping you is the fear of how your life is going to change and possibly what you could lose. I will say that although I understand that there is nothing but good things on this side. That is, of course, understanding relationships will be impacted. But at the end of the day, like I learned through some professional help, the responsibility does have to go back to those people who decide to shun you. They're the ones picking a religion over you. But I do understand we all in our own due time. The other reason I wanted to make this video is for people who have gone ahead and left and are in that initial stage of really struggling, like wondering, all the what ifs, right? Like, what if I had left sooner? What have I missed out on? As well as just fear of like what to do next, and possibly even to help heal, or what they need to do to heal their emotional traumas. I am going to share all of my insights, but they are very personal to me. I obviously am not a psychologist. I do not have any kind of mental health degree. I'm really just here as a fellow ex-Jehovah's Witness who had, for the majority of my life, poured my heart and soul and was 1,000% mentally into that organization. So I'm coming to you from someone who broke away from that, who went through all those doubts, all that pain, and a lot of suffering, and just the things that I've learned along my journey that have helped me to heal. I actually did make a couple notes this time, like I normally never do, just so that this is so important to me, and hopefully I can help encourage somebody, that I wanted to make sure I covered all the bases. So one of the first things is that we as Jehovah's Witnesses, we're raised to believe that everything is just hunky-dory all the time. You are supposed to basically ignore the pain and the hurt because you're taught that those things will kind of come to an end at Armageddon. And so even though things may be negative, you aren't really given the skills to truly deal with those feelings because you are just so focused on when things are going to be perfect. So it becomes sometimes part of your DNA, and I think oftentimes for women, part of our DNA at that point to not hold accountability or not have the ugly truth conversations when it comes to relationships and people who did hurt us. So one of my first biggest things, my personal, was to start holding accountable the people who harmed me as well as the organization as a whole. So, I started at the top, being able to, feel, first of all, and admit to myself some of the ugly truths about relationships that maybe I held dear. Of course, I think when you first get out, the easy one to target is the governing body, right? They're the puppeteers, they're the masters of their domain at the top of the food chain, controlling all these things. So it's easy to put those feelings of resentment and pain back onto them, which rightfully most of it belongs. But what starts to become a little bit more difficult, at least it was for me, was having that conversation with myself that people that I really loved a lot and who I know loved me, namely my parents, especially my mom, since she was the spiritual head of our house, she was the one that was a witness, really hold some resentment, admit out loud, like, I resent that happened, that she raised us in this organization, that she oftentimes turned a blind eye to things, and that she made us feel very bad for just being normal, healthy, teenagers and adults. So most of my life, because my mom was so spiritual, and don't get me wrong, she was a fabulous, fabulous person. I learned so much from her. I have so much to thank her for. I mean, she was incredible. And she, I know, was doing the best that she could when it came to what she thought was right, which was raising us all in a cult. I had to eventually come to understand the only reason she clung to that is because of her own past had been so full of abuse and harm. The only thing she had herself to look forward to was forgetting all of that someday and living in a pain-free, emotionally happy, world. So, but to get to that point, I had to have that internal ugly conversation of saying, like, it's not okay that she did it. And it's not okay, some of the things that she said even. Unfortunately, she had passed away before I woke up, so I didn't have the chance to share that with her in any way. But I had to very much work through that on my own and kind of have those quiet conversations with myself and keep a journal and say, if she were here, these were the things that I would have shared with her. Not in an angry fashion. I totally forgive my mom for having us in a cult, because I can hang on to the little things that really were big things that really helped shape me, that I absolutely loved her for. So I think that's the first thing that as a witness we are absolutely not encouraged to do, which is confront those relationships, especially when they are people who are also witnesses. So to get to that point, to be able, even if it's someone you can't actually confront face to face and say, I love you, I appreciate things you did for me, but this thing you did is so wrong and it really kind of wrecked my life in these ways, it really helps to free up that part of your emotion and puts that responsibility back to where it belongs. The second major thing for me, which was the most difficult, was actually speaking up. Just starting to tell people, like, this is how I was raised. There's an embarrassment that comes with being raised the way that we were. For me, since I was homeschooled, I did not have the same kind of natural day-to-day embarrassment that other witnesses do when they're in school, and they have to learn from a very early age to speak up and tell people, like, I don't celebrate holidays and I don't celebrate birthdays and so forth. I find that those ex-witnesses who were in those positions oftentimes have a leg up on me when it comes to when in their life they were able to start telling people the whole truth about their experience. For me, because I was homeschooled and I was so young when I was pioneering and so forth, I felt this I was very embarrassed, and I carried this stigma about the way that I was raised. But I found that once I started talking about it a little bit to people, they were not, they didn't ridicule. A lot of people would, even if they had questions, they were very nice to ask me first and say, is it okay if I ask you some questions? And I suddenly realized that worldly people, are oftentimes much more in tune with their emotions and with that tact and sensitivity than witnesses ever were. And once I was able to start speaking up and, like, telling people, I was raised this way and I was raised that way, and then the more that I woke up, and then the more that I gradually realized, like, I wasn't just in this weird religion, but I was technically in a high control group, then that was another level of, like, embarrassment for me. But then also, like, the first time I remember the first time I said that out loud to somebody, like, I was in a cult, and they're, like, shocked. And then people are often very impressed that you're a normal person contributing member to society, and then they want to learn more about your journey. And so for me, to be able to just speak up and speak out and share my experience more helped immensely. It took that stigma and shame again away from me, and it put it back to where it belongs, which is on that leadership. Now, those were the stair steps to where I currently am, which is a YouTube channel, a big mouth on YouTube or on Twitter, and I'm currently writing my book as well, which is all part of the healing process, because you're getting that information out there. I think the other thing, which is the real challenge, is to accentuate the positive. I still struggle with giving credit to the fact that being raised the way that I was is the reason that I'm so comfortable speaking in public, as well as some leadership ability when it comes to helping to just jump in and arrange certain things, whether it be related to my work or functions. But the truth of the matter is, I don't know if I had not been raised in that environment. So all those years of regular pioneering and giving talks and really just kind of being in the forefront of that spiritual movement, I don't know that I would have the level of skill that I do. Not just that, but the comfort level. And when you're young and you're, like, pioneering and you're a female, oftentimes you are in a situation where some responsibilities put on you if a man isn't there, where you have to step up and arrange certain things, like, car groups for the field service activity. And so that did help me to mold part of my brain in taking on responsibility. The other thing, I don't know if I hadn't been raised that way, if I would have the work ethic that I do in regards to, like, being able to multitask and take on a lot. So the thing with when you're a witness, you had to be busy all the time. Like, you made a career out of just being busy. You had to study for all those meetings, you had to attend the meetings, you had to go in field service, you had to prepare for field service, you had to then, like work your regular job, and then whatever like housekeeping things that you had to do, you have people doing that and then raising a family. And so there was really no downtime. There's no day at all ever to just sit and relax or to take a day off. It's not in the program when you're an active witness. So for me, the fact that I am kind of busy all the time, I have my full-time job, I do this on the side some, I have a side business, I don't know that I would be as successful as I am, and not really tend to feel like stressed out when I'm this busy if that hadn't been kind of the way that I was raised. And quite honestly, I still struggle a little bit with, like, if I do have a weekend, to just not do anything. It's just not who I am. Like, I can not do anything for a few hours, but then I have to find something to do. And I credit that, good or bad, that part, to the way that I was raised. So it has helped me, because when I first realized that, I was very frustrated, especially when it came to the public speaking and the ability to kind of improvise and talk to people about uncomfortable things, that initially I was a little resentful. But then I was like, you know what I have to do? I have to take those skills and I have to flip them and I have to use them against. So they may have helped to bring out this part in myself, but since they did, I'm now going to use it to hopefully help bring down the watchtower. So that's how I deal with that and how I appreciate it. I think the biggest thing, honestly, is building healthy relationships, which is way easier said than done. And I kind of talk about that a little bit in my last video. But even if it's just one person or two people, that you can have truly transparent relationships with, where, like, for my very best friend who I've had forever, we have the kind of relationship where if we call the other person on the phone and we don't feel like talking, we will text or just tell them that the next time we do. We never make up an excuse like, oh, I was busy or I was asleep. Just be like, man, I had a really long day and I knew you'd call me back. So those kinds of relationships are invaluable, because you can be your true self and know you're not being judged, and then you can repay the favor. For me, I'm fortunate enough to have found a partner that his family have really embraced me, and they're my true extended family. I know that in that aspect, I'm a lot more fortunate than some people, but what I can say is get to the point in your life where you don't settle for things. I think as a witness, you are taught to settle all the time, especially if you're a woman. You just find someone who will marry you, and you will be able to accomplish your spiritual goals, and that's all that matters. And that's a hard thing to overcome, but learning who you are, what your interests are, and really what is important to you deep down. Like, do you both have to have the same hobbies, or is it more important that you both feel the same way about how you treat other people? Do you both want to do the same thing when you have a day off, or is it more important that you feel the same way about the human rights movement? It's really looking at that big picture and finding the person or people who align with that. Because all that other little stuff at the end of the day, if somebody else doesn't want to read comics and I do, I'm not going to like sit around in a room with someone else who likes to read comics and we're going to read comics together anyways. Like, you can have your independent fun things that you like to do. It's really about that big picture of, this is how I feel about the things that matter. And knowing that if that person doesn't even 100% align with exactly the way that you feel about it, you can still express yourself and they can express themselves without judgment, and you can learn from one another. And I think that's like the biggest thing, not just in like a romantic partner, but in friends and people that you spend your time with. I was with some friends not too long ago, and somebody said something that I thought was hilarious, and you realize like that's when you're in a comfort zone, is when you're with other people, and when someone says something and you think, oh, you know what, like 80% of the population would be offended if I sat here and just said like God is a lie. But I know these people aren't, because we're all on the same page. So whatever that is, you need to find that tribe, even if it's really tiny, and just make sure that you tell those people that you care about them and you love them. And that will absolutely erase the loneliness of missing those people that you thought were your friends, but really they were just convenient people to hang out with because you both ended up going to the same Kingdom Hall together. The other thing is, of course, and I think this is something that is thrown around a lot, and that's about getting professional help. We talk about getting therapy like it's just this easy, like you're just going to walk out the door and find the perfect therapist. I think this is probably the biggest and most challenging piece in recovery, and that's because A, the right therapist can sometimes be really hard to come by, and B, let's be honest, not all of us can afford it. So for me, my therapy began actually with podcasts. There are lots of podcasts that are out there that deal with mental health that are run by psychologists and psychiatrists, and they have all the topics you can imagine. And I'll tell you, when I couldn't find and didn't have access to the right therapist, that was truly a lifesaver. So I encourage you to research that if you need to, and you will find something that resonates with you, even if it's a little nugget here and a little nugget there. For myself, I found also very therapeutic to listen to other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses' experiences, especially when it had a similar thread to mine. It might be topics that if you hadn't gone through it would be kind of heavy, and maybe some people would think is too much or overwhelming, but it's important when you're going through that healing process, you can feel like an island on your own. When I made my last video about not having children and having that decision basically made by the Jehovah's Witness organization, that was really hard because I always felt like I was just completely, like it was just me that felt that way. And then you make that video and you have all these people telling you that you're just mirroring what they experienced. And it brings comfort. And so I will say that now in my recovery, I do have a limit to how much ex-Jehovah's Witness content that I can take in. I still love to listen to my fellow YouTubers and some podcasts, but there are other forums like groups on Facebook and Reddit and that sort of thing that I just can't really get that involved in anymore, because it tends to be it's not quite as much about like healing and, hey, you might have gone through this and I went through it and let's talk about it together. And so you just need to find the thing that resonates with you. And I promise you, there is an ex-JW out there that has gone through nearly the identical thing that you have. And it's not just us. It's like, the ex-Mormon community too, right? Our cult cousins. Like, they have a lot in common. We have a lot in common. And so if you can't afford actual therapy, or you just can't find the right therapist just yet, I would say to do a little research on what books that may be available and what podcasts are out there that are therapy based that really can help you in your recovery, because that is absolutely what has helped me. The last thing, and this one might seem a little unique or bizarre, but for me personally, I had to investigate what I did believe. So you leave, so I left, I started to wake up, and then I started to realize everything I believed and what I felt about certain things did not, I just didn't believe it anymore. I was I was very slow in my education of what level of spirituality that I was in. And I pretty quickly realized that I probably for most of my life was heavily agnostic. Even when I was very active Jehovah's Witness, I never, ever, ever felt that there was this great spiritual connection that I had. I did everything I was supposed to, but I just never, ever felt it. So I went down the route of exploring things more scientifically based and realizing that my belief system did not align with any kind of religion out there anymore whatsoever. And that in itself was a weird turning point to realize I went from being a evangelical to an atheist at the end of the day. In that, the biggest, hardest, challenging thing for me was grief. So as we talked about before, I've had a lot of loss. I've lost a sister. I've lost a sister-in-law, a nephew, both my parents, more recently my brother, as well as some really close friends. That's without talking about extended family. So 90% of my draw of staying or going back to being a witness was like many people, and that was the resurrection hope. When I started to come to terms with my own spirituality or lack thereof, whatever you want to say, I had a really hard time with I never made peace when these people were alive with never really seeing them again. And that was really, really difficult at first. But then I thought, do I really want to believe that people are in heaven or in hell? Because is that really comforting? And what was the point of us having this huge bond on earth if we're just going to repeat it again in a different place? It never made sense to me personally. And I remember a real turning point for me was after my brother had died. And somebody, of course, they were trying to be comforting, and they were sharing with me that he was in heaven now, and he was looking over and keeping watch and all of this stuff. And I remember that when I had gone through my divorce, I left my house and I went to stay with a really good friend. My brother lived in another state. He found out what was going on. He worked all day, got in his car, and then he drove for 4.5 hours to where I was, came into the house. By then it was midnight. He was exhausted. He just came in the house. I was asleep. He woke me up, and he just, gave me a great big bear hug, and he said to me, I cannot let you go through this alone. I cannot be this close and not come and help you. And from then on, he was by my side and helped me with everything. And when somebody tried to comfort me, oh, he's in heaven and he sees this, it hurt me physically in my soul, because I thought that would be not heaven for him. That would be hell because of who he was. If he was in a place and he saw how I was suffering when he died and the depth of my trauma and grief, and he had to see that and he couldn't literally wrap his arms around me, it would be extremely traumatic. And so I was there's no way. There is no way. That is so painful to think about. And then I thought about I have this really keen sense, and it's probably because of my early childhood abuse. I have a very keen intuition and sense, physical sense that I get around people, where if it's not a very good person, my body reacts. The hair goes up on my arms. I feel queasy, I feel uneasy. I just know that they're not good. And it's all about the energy that we put off. And then I realized, like, we're all made of energy. The universe is made of energy. We're made of energy and molecules. So even though the witnesses taught that when you died, you just were gone and dead in the ground and unconscious, right, until God resurrected you, there was a part of me that kind of believed that, but I did also feel like there had to be something else. And now I could be completely wrong, but my personal belief and the thing that brings me peace personally is to believe that when we die, our energy that makes us up is just displaced into the universe. And I strongly believe that when you go to certain areas and there's not another human being around there, but you feel this sense of peace and sense of calm, it's because those types of people have spent an important amount of time there. That's how our property is, a piece of property that I own that was our family's. It's exactly what it feels like. And I recently found out that we are multiple generations into this very specific piece of land that people have literally been drawn to. And I know it's because people with good energy have stood on that soil for many, many years. I also feel like that's why when you go to other places and there's not another human being soul there, and you feel like you don't like it very much, or you don't feel very good being there, it's because of the same thing. Bad things have happened there, or bad people have been there. So I very much believe that I want to do everything that I can, and I want to put into this world now the most positive energy that I possibly can. And so that when I die, that energy is positive and good and literally goes out into the world. I think that's also why there are things like twin sense. When twins sense that something else is going on with somebody else, it's why I think parents know when there's something going on with their child. There's an energy from that womb time that is created between two people, and that is that sense that goes on. I'm a firm believer in that. The reason I say that is because I recently heard a new take. There's a phrase out there called YOLO. Some of you might know it. Called you only live once. And I have always hated that phrase. And I recently heard a take on it that said that's really not true. You actually live every day. You only die once. And so make it the best day that you can. And also, when I started to come around to this idea of when we die, our energy, we do die. Like, our fleshly bodies go away. And I don't think there's a conscious soul thing that floats around. But I do feel that energy, those vibes that are in us and who we are, go out into the world and hopefully continue to make it a better place. With that said, there's an old poem that has really helped me to make a lot of peace with my grief over the people that I've lost. And I think of this all the time. And it goes, "Do not stand by my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am the thousand winds that blow. I am the diamond glints in snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. As you awake with morning hush, I am the swift upfling rush of quiet birds in circling flight. I am the day transcending night. Do not stand by my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die." So, for me, when people now tell me, like, that person is with you, or whatever their platitude may be, my mind goes back to that poem, and I think, you know what? They are. Their energy is here. What they left behind. And every time I feel like I cannot go on. I am not strong enough to accomplish this, that, and the other. I feel like that energy, that stubborn strength that my mom had, that powerhouse, quiet, gritty determination that my brother had, those energies went out into the world, and I was close enough to them to capture it. So that's a very weird thing, I think, to have in a discussion about what helps you now that you're awake to have a purposeful and happy life. But that's a big part, I think, for all of us who maybe have lost somebody, and have struggled with how we view that grieving process. With all that said, those are some of the big things that helped me to focus on letting go of the anger that I used to carry around and the resentment, and really focus on living my best life. However, I will say that was a big part of my life, being an active Jehovah's Witness and all those traumas. And I'm never ever going to be 100% all right with it. I will always have bouts of resentment, of frustration, of sadness, regret. And I want to just share that is completely normal. Human beings, we are not creatures that are meant to have a single emotion of just being happy all the time. We have this whole range of emotion to feel sad and angry and depressed and upset and confused, and that's totally okay. I think the very first most important thing is to admit to ourselves, like, I feel this negative feeling. As a Jehovah's Witness, again, you are not encouraged to feel anything negative. So getting to the point where you say, I feel this negative thing. I'm not okay with the way that I was raised. I'm not okay with what the governing body did to my family. And then working through that to get to the other side to say, but at the same time, who knows if I would have had the nerve to do a YouTube channel. And so for me, it's like, I'm so grateful for the opportunities that I've created for myself in life. I'm very fortunate to have met some of the people that I have who have propped me up and helped me to find my strength, to quietly find my strength and get here. So it's always important. In a therapy session, I actually did learn that the human mind is very interesting. We remember 5 negative things for every 2 positive things. So in a day, if you have 10 good things happen to you and you have 5 bad things happen to you, you're going to remember all 5 of the bad things, and you might remember 2 of the good things. That's just how our brains are wired. So you have to, or I had to, consciously recognize when something really awesome happened that day. I would write it down and keep a journal every time that it happened through the day, and not write any of the bad stuff that happened to me. It was a struggle. You will not believe what a struggle that can be. But pretty soon you start to find a pattern in yourself where you do recognize those good and those positive and those happy. You're still recognizing the negative, but it's easier to recognize the positive and the good. I think at the end of the day, really, my message is just to say it really does get better. And if you are at a point where you feel kind of hopeless, kind of low, there's a whole community out here who have your back. And we are amazing when it comes to reaching out and helping each other if we need to. And just know you are certainly not alone, and you are very loved, and you're very wanted in this world. I'm very grateful on my side of things that I have been able to have a relatively successful career, as well as a great relationships in my life. And I think maybe because some of the past videos that I've done have had such a heavy tone to them, because they were focused on a specific negative event that might not have come through all the time. But I am genuinely happy, and I am successful, and I do not dwell on the past negative parts. However, I do revisit them because it is part of who I am, and it's also really key in my hopefully helping other people to wake up and to know that there is so much more on this side of the organization. So that was really all I had to share today. I hope maybe this one was helpful to you. If so, please like, subscribe, share. Feel free to comment. You can email me too if you want. It's aisforapostate@gmail.com. And I hope everybody keeps their heads up, reaches out a hand to somebody today and helps them as well. And, there is a real life, and it's absolutely on this side of the organization. So, till then, I hope you have a wonderful, happy, cult-free day.